The words were like a dagger aimed at my heart from across the table. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." I froze, the serving spoon still clutched in my hand. The sweet scent of vanilla pudding hung in the air of the room I had labored so hard to make inviting. The crystal glasses gleamed under the soft light, the silverware polished to a mirror finish. I had yearned for peace that evening. Instead, an oppressive stillness enveloped every corner of my dining room. Jane sat opposite me, her scarlet dress a fiery, conspicuous blaze. Her eyes sparkled with a triumphant gleam, as if she'd been waiting for the perfect opportunity to deliver her blow. My son, Robert, avoided my gaze, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm against his phone. I pushed my chair back, my heart thudding in my chest, yet my voice was unwavering. "Then your mother can begin covering your rent." Robert's head snapped up, his face a ghostly white. "Rent?" he exclaimed, the word shattering the quiet like a pane of glass. That single instant would change everything. My name is Charlotte Dawson. I'm 72 years old, and that was the night I finally became visible. My name is Charlotte Dawson, and I have resided in the same little town in Oregon for over 3 decades. I'm a widow, a retired dressmaker, and a mother who spent the majority of her life prioritizing others. My hands bear the evidence of this, calluses from countless hours of sewing dresses, hemming trousers, and mending coats for neighbors who sometimes paid me in money and sometimes only in thanks. This house, which now feels like a stage for conflict, contains 32 years of my life's narrative. Every nook holds a story. The old rocking chair in the living room still bears the memory of nights I stayed awake nursing Robert through his fevers. The quilt on the sofa is fashioned from leftover scraps of customers' gowns, each square a stitched testament to the effort I poured into my work. For so long, I believed that assisting my family was the same as loving them. What I didn't comprehend was that sometimes this help can erode you bit by bit until you no longer recognize your own reflection. 6 months prior to that fateful dinner, Robert appeared at my doorstep. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice quavering as he spoke. "Mom, I've been let go from my job. We can't afford the rent." "Please, it'll only be for a few months until I find something else." A mother's heart doesn't hesitate. I accessed my savings account, the funds I had painstakingly saved over years of stitching and sacrifice, and started paying their rent. $900 every month, plus an extra $100 for the landlord's transfer fee. A total of $1,000 vanished from my account on the 5th of each month. "Don't tell Jane," Robert pleaded. "She'll feel too ashamed accepting charity from you." I accepted his words as truth, thinking I was protecting her dignity. In reality, he was safeguarding his own. To maintain that regular payment, I made sacrifices everywhere. Our dinners became a monotonous routine of rice and eggs. I rationed my arthritis medication until the pain kept me awake through the night. I wore the same threadbare shoes until the soles came apart. Still, I convinced myself it was all worthwhile, because my son needed me. Meanwhile, Robert and Jane dined at restaurants, bought new clothes, and shared pictures of weekend getaways I knew they couldn't afford. I silently bore their burden, convinced that one day they would acknowledge my sacrifice and be grateful. That evening, I wanted everything to be perfect. I prepared Robert's favorite meal, chicken with mushroom sauce, rice with vegetables, and the vanilla pudding he had loved since he was a small boy. I set the table with my mother's heirloom crystal and the silver fatware I reserved for special gatherings. Jane arrived in a red gown that likely cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She offered a smile, but it was the kind I had come to recognize over the years, the one she wore right before she was about to offer a critique. Robert appeared uneasy from the moment he entered, avoiding my gaze and fiddling with his phone as if it held the solutions to every issue he didn't want to confront. As we ate, Jane began her usual routine. "The food is a bit cool," she observed. "Don't you think it's time to redecorate this place? My mother's house is so contemporary. She's up to date on all the latest trends." I kept my expression gentle, trying to maintain the peace. This house wasn't modern, but every corner held a memory, every item a piece of my life's labor. I had hoped we would end the night with dessert and laughter. I yearned for one peaceful meal, but I could already feel the tension building around the table. Dessert was supposed to soften the mood. I brought the vanilla pudding to the table, recalling how Robert used to scrape the bowl clean as a boy, telling me I was the best cook in the world. For a fleeting moment, I thought we might end the night on a gentle note. Then Jane leaned back, her fork resting on the plate, and uttered the words that cleaved the room in two. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." The spoon froze in my hand. The clock in the kitchen ticked loudly, each second piercing the silence. Robert kept his eyes downcast, his shoulders rigid. I carefully set the spoon on the table and rose slowly. My voice was calm, but it carried a weight I hadn't felt in years. "Then your mother can start paying your rent at 46 Briar Lane, Unit 3. Robert's head shot up, his glass tipping and spilling water across the tabletop. "What rent?" he stammered, his face utterly pale. "The rent I've been covering since February," I said with a steady voice. "$900 each month, plus the $100 fee for the landlord's deposit. $1,000 paid faithfully so the two of you could live comfortably." Jane's smile crumbled. Her carefully painted confidence fractured into confusion. Robert sat speechless, his jaw hanging open. For the first time in months, the truth was mine to reveal, and I was no longer afraid to speak it. The silence that followed my words was so heavy it seemed to press all the air out of the room. Robert blinked repeatedly, as if he could undo the truth by refusing to acknowledge it. Finally, his voice broke through. "Mom, I was going to tell you. I was fired 2 weeks ago." The confession hit like a blow. Fired? And yet he had allowed his wife to walk into my home in a designer dress and treat me as if I were beneath her. Jane turned to him, her eyes blazing. "You lost your job and didn't tell me? She spent $400 on shoes last week. I booked the spa for my birthday, and you let me do it while we're broke?" Robert ran his hands through his hair, the same nervous tic he had since he was a child. "I thought I could fix it before you found out. I didn't want to disappoint you." I looked at them both, the image of arrogance colliding with the reality of ruin. My chest ached, not from pity, but from anger so ancient it felt new again. "Shoes and spa treatments," I said slowly, "while I sold your father's wedding ring to cover your rent." The room fell silent once more. This time, it wasn't confusion that lingered, it was shame. I stood tall, feeling an unfamiliar strength rise within me. For years, I had yielded, softened, compromised. But in that moment, I was finished with yielding. "Robert, Jane," I said with resolve, "your lease is up in 30 days. After that, I will not pay a single cent for your apartment." Robert's mouth fell open. "Mom, you can't do that. We'll have nowhere to go." "You should have considered that before you lied to me," I replied. My voice was not cruel. It was simply clear. Jane slammed her hand on the table. "Mothers don't abandon their children. My mother would never do this to me." I looked her directly in the eyes. "I am not abandoning my son. I am refusing to be taken advantage of. There is a distinction." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Mom, just one more chance.
I'll get a job. I'll make things right. I shook my head gently. Promises don't pay rent, Robert. Actions do. If you want to prove yourself, start now. But I will no longer be the safety net that allows you to avoid responsibility. For the first time in many years, I felt the burden of their expectations sliding off my shoulders. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. This was me choosing to respect myself. When the door finally closed behind them, the house became quiet in a way I had not experienced in years. No harsh words, no nervous tapping, just the hum of the refrigerator and the steady tick of the wall clock. I stood at the sink, rinsing dishes under warm water, watching the soap bubbles swirl and burst. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the liberation of everything I had carried alone. That night, I sat in my rocking chair, the one that had seen me through nights of fevers and storms, and listened to the creak of the wood. For the first time in months, I did not feel a sense of dread weighing on my chest. When sleep came, it was deep and unbroken. I dreamt of nothing and everything at once: freedom, peace, and the strange calm of knowing a line had been drawn. By morning, the sunlight streamed across the dining table where the confrontation had taken place. It was the same room, the same furniture, the same walls, yet it felt different, lighter, as if the house itself had taken a deep breath. 2 days later, the phone rang just after sunset. I almost didn't answer. I had grown weary of bad news. But something inside me urged me to pick it up. Charlotte, it's Alex Jones. The name instantly transported me back 50 years. Alex, my college sweetheart, the boy with the crooked grin who once promised to take me to see the Pacific Ocean. We had lost touch when he moved west to pursue opportunities, and I remained behind to build a family. His voice was older now, deeper, but it held the same warmth I remembered. He told me he had spent the last 40 decades building an engineering firm in San Diego. He had raised 3 children, his wife had passed away 2 years ago, and recently, while going through old photographs, he had found one of me, the girl in a white dress with red flowers that I had sewn myself. "I wondered if you were still in Oregon," he said softly. "I just wanted to hear your voice again." We spoke for hours that night, sharing fragments of our lives, our losses, our small triumphs. Before we hung up, Alex paused. "Charlotte, I'd like to invite you to spend a month in San Diego. No expectations, just old friends catching up. You deserve an extraordinary life, and I'd be honored to show you a piece of mine." I sat holding the phone long after the call ended, my heart thumping in a way I hadn't felt in years. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Alex's invitation replaying in my mind. A month in San Diego, the Pacific Ocean, the kind of adventure I used to fantasize about before my life became weighed down with obligation. But I am 72 years old, I reminded myself. What if this was foolish? What if Alex was not the boy I remembered, but someone who only wanted to take advantage of me? I made a list in my notebook. On one side, the risks: scams, nostalgia clouding judgment, disappointment. On the other side, the safeguards: video calls to confirm his life, meeting his family, paying for my own ticket so I owed him nothing, keeping my finances separate. I then asked myself the most difficult question. Was I considering this to punish Robert and Jane, or was I considering it for myself? The truth settled quietly in my chest. For the first time in decades, the decision wasn't about anyone else's comfort. It was about mine. I closed the notebook and whispered into the darkness. I'm not running away. I'm choosing myself. The thought was terrifying. It was also exhilarating. After years of sacrificing for others, I had just given myself permission to consider my own happiness. A week later, Robert appeared at my door. His clothes were wrinkled, his face gaunt, and the dark circles under his eyes told me he hadn't slept much. For a moment, I almost saw the little boy he once was, standing at the door after scraping his knee. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk?" We sat at the kitchen table. He wrapped his hands around a cup of coffee as if he needed it to steady himself. "I've been sleeping in my car," he admitted, "for 3 nights now. I finally found night work with a cleaning company. It's not much, but it pays enough for a room downtown, and I've signed up for online classes, basic accounting certification. I want to do better." I studied his face. For once, he didn't look defensive. He looked humbled. I also started therapy at the community center. Free sessions. The counselor told me something that really hit me. He said I've been addicted to being rescued my whole life. Every time someone bailed me out, it felt like relief, like a drug. And I never learned to stand on my own. He lifted his eyes to mine. "I'm not here to ask for money. I'm here to tell you I'm trying, and I'll keep trying even if it takes years for you to believe me." For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. Fragile, but real. The following week, I stood in my bedroom with an open suitcase on the bed. For years, my life had revolved around paying bills, mending clothes, and surviving 1 month to the next. Now I was packing dresses, one coral pink I had sewn just for myself, for a journey I never imagined I would take. Robert drove me to the airport. The car ride was quiet, not heavy with resentment, but with something softer. Acceptance, perhaps. When we reached the terminal, he pulled a small bouquet of daisies from the back seat, my favorite flowers since I was a girl. "Mom," he said, handing me an envelope, "don't open this until you're on the plane. It's easier for me to write than to speak." We hugged longer than we had in years. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too, son," I said, my voice steady. Now it's time for both of us to stand on our own 2 feet. On the plane, as clouds spread like an endless field below me, I opened his letter. In shaky handwriting, Robert had written, "Fly high, Mom. You've earned it." For the first time in decades, I felt the sky was truly mine. San Diego greeted me with cool air that smelled faintly of salt and pine. At the arrivals gate, Alex stood waiting, a bouquet of yellow roses in his hands. His hair was white now, his face lined, but his smile was the same one that once made my heart race in college. "Charlotte," he said when we embraced, "you're even more beautiful than I remembered." The days that followed were unlike anything I'd lived in years. Alex drove me to the Pacific coast. I stood barefoot in the sand, watching waves crash endlessly, and whispered to myself, "I made it." At dinner on his deck, with the sun sinking into the horizon, he cooked salmon and poured me wine. His children came by later in the week, greeting me with a warmth I hadn't expected. His youngest daughter, Claire, hugged me tightly and said, "Dad hasn't smiled this much since Mom passed. Thank you for bringing back his light." Every evening we talked for hours about our regrets, our triumphs, our silly youthful dreams. For once, I wasn't someone's mother or caretaker. I was Charlotte, a woman with stories to tell, laughter to share, and a heart still open to love. Healing didn't come all at once, but each conversation, each sunset, stitched me back together in ways I hadn't thought possible. One evening, after a month of shared dinners and quiet mornings, Alex sat across from me on the deck. The sky was streaked with orange and purple, and gulls circled lazily over the water. He reached for my hand, his eyes steady and kind. "Charlotte," he said, "I know this might sound sudden. I'm not asking for marriage right away. I'm asking for a chance for us. Move to San Diego. Let's see what we can build at this stage of our lives." My first instinct was fear. My home, my few friends, the life I had clung to for decades. But then I thought of Robert's letter. Fly high, Mom. I thought of all the years I'd spent giving, sacrificing, shrinking myself. And I realized that saying yes wasn't reckless. It was brave. A month later, I stood in my old house packing the last of my belongings. Robert helped, calmer now, his shoulders straighter. Funny, he said with a smile, by letting you go, I finally feel like I've really got you back. Not the mother who rescued me, but the woman I never knew well enough. At 72 years old, I was not closing a chapter. I was opening one, and this time the story was mine to write. Looking back now from the porch of Alex's house that overlooks the Pacific, I realized something I wish I had learned sooner. It is never too late to choose yourself. Robert is rebuilding his life. He works steadily, pays his bills, and even started dating a woman who encourages him instead of enabling him. He still calls me every week, but not to ask for help, to share his progress. And for the first time in years, I feel proud of the man he is becoming. As for Jane, she married a man older than herself who could fund the lifestyle she craved. I no longer feel bitterness when I think of her. Some people never change, and that's their journey, not mine. What I carry with me is this lesson. Unconditional love is powerful, but without boundaries, it becomes a trap. Being a mother doesn't mean becoming invisible. It means raising children to stand, even if it means watching them stumble first. To anyone listening, maybe you've sacrificed too much. Maybe you've been told you are less than you are. Hear me. You are not too old, too late, or too small to begin again. I was 72 when I boarded that plane, 72 when I opened my heart to joy, 72 when I learned that happiness is not a gift others give us. It's a choice we must finally give ourselves. And if I could do it, so can you.